Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new party has been dogged by public spats and a level of mismanagement that would take too long to recount here. But essentially, it's split into two factions. On the one side, you have Zara Sultana. On the other, you have Jeremy Corbyn and the Independent Alliance as a group of 4 independent MPs elected last year. All that changed on Friday, though. That's when Blackburn MP Adnan Hussain dramatically quit your party just hours after Novara Media sent him a polite email asking him to comment on allegations that he didn't even want to become a member of the group. In his resignation letter, Hussain said, the culture surrounding the party has become dominated by persistent infighting, factional competition, and a struggle for power, position, and influence rather than a shared commitment to the common good. I have also been deeply troubled by the way certain figures within the steering process, particularly Muslim men, have been spoken about and treated. At times, the rhetoric has been disturbingly similar to the very political forces the left claims to oppose. Hussain had been at a centre of a number of political storms. Many amongst your party's base were unhappy about his involvement in a number of real estate and rental companies while steering the formation of a socialist party. But it was a split between Zara Sultana and Adnan Hussain over trans rights that seemed to cause the biggest outrage among the membership. Late last summer, Hussain called for, quote, safe third spaces for trans women, asserting that women's rights and safe spaces should not be encroached upon. He also added that trans women are, quote, not biologically women and hence trans women as 2 separate words. That appeared to earn a public rebuke from Sultana, who posted this a few days later. Trans rights are human rights. Your party will defend them, no ifs, no buts, and I won't let anyone, whoever they are, get in the way of this fight. Solidarity always. Of course, it's not as though your party didn't have enough problems beyond ideological splits. There's been a standoff over £800,000 of your party funds, which are now slowly being transferred from Zara Sultana to the steering committee. There's also been a continuing row over member data. And as recently as last week, Sultana claimed she'd been sabotaged just moments before a question time appearance when the Corbyn faction put out a statement that she said undermined her. Helena, we've spoken before about sort of the troubles of your party, and you're a Green Party member, so obviously you've got sort of specific views on this. So I suppose it'd actually probably be more interesting to discuss the sort of general principle here, which was a debate about what are the limits of who can be in a left-wing party. So should social conservatives be allowed in a left-wing party? If social conservatives are excluded, would that impact religious people who might want to be a member of the party and therefore be exclusionary in its own way or be a barrier to building proper coalitions? I wondered what you sort of thought about this debate that's been brewing online, I suppose for months now, but especially this weekend.
I probably should start off with an apology. So in response to Adnan Hussain's statement, I tweeted out something that was kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it was minimising potential Islamophobia that he had faced. And I want to apologise to Adnan for that. I do say sorry for that. And although to be fair, what I will say, he is still a landlord and I still have that issue. But what I will say about the broader debate around social progressivism versus social conservatism, but united by kind of left-wing economics. Now, there will need to be a broad coalition of people if we want to implement left-wing economics in this country. Plenty of social conservatives support our positions on nationalisation, on workers' rights, on industrial policy, on international geopolitics. That will always be the case, right? The issue, of course, is trying to find a way of making sure the economic issues are what are the most salient without undermining our own principles as part of that party, right? So when it comes to issues such as trans rights, for example, it does seem to be the opposition really rate this issue much higher than they care themselves about class issues. It does seem to me that there are plenty of people who are willing to say, well, if you won't support my position that is trans exclusionary, I won't vote for your progressive party despite that shared interest in economics. Whereas I don't think any person who supports social policy would vote for the Conservatives, for example, for their right-wing economic policy if they started being socially progressive. I think that's a different kind of dynamic, which makes it harder to unify social conservatives into a left-wing party on economics. But what I will say, when it comes to the Adnan Hussain situation very specifically, is that I don't think there's anything wrong with having your own personal beliefs that are socially conservative if you're part of a broader left-wing party. Like, no one really cares what Adnan Hussein does or doesn't think of in his own time, likewise with any other social conservative. The issue is when it comes to being advocating for that policy as broader party policy. And second, it comes to when you're put onto the steering committee of this party, when that view clearly is different from what I've seen in terms of social media interactions with the median position of the party that you're there to represent. Like, if his open position was, I have this own personal view, but I would take a backseat. All of these policies have to be decided by the membership, and whatever they say will go, and I'll keep that otherwise to myself. I don't think many people would have an issue. The fact that he keeps, I guess I don't want to make it specifically about him, but the fact that people who disagree with a pro-trans position seem to want to continue making it part of their public advocacy. Well, I mean, you're part of a broadly progressive party. I don't think that they're going to really take much light to that. And if you get backlash, then I don't see why you're surprised. I saw another tweet which was talking about the idea that people of religious minority backgrounds feel like that their religious beliefs should be left at the door. And I'm like, well, the left have always kind of been secular, at least for the past kind of 30, 40 years in this country. Like, most religious minorities are expected to leave their beliefs at the door and argue with all their positions from a materialistic or a naturalistic standpoint as secular ideology would dictate. Look what happened to Tim Farron when he was the leader of the Liberal Democrats. Now, obviously, they're a right-wing party on the economy, so it's not an exact comparison, but it was clear that his views on homosexuality were totally out of step with the Liberal Democrats' supporter base. And so people wanted to make sure that those beliefs of his didn't actually impact on the Liberal Democrats' policy as a leader of the party, not as obviously, it's a leadership position that's the issue here. All parties are broad coalitions. All parties will have people who disagree on certain issues, whether economic or social or whatever. But it's got to be a group decision. The reason why I'm very happy being a member of the Green Party is we've almost universally dictated in terms of how our members have voted on policy to be pro-trans, and people who want to be a part of that can be a part of that if they really want. But if they want to put their interests in support of gender critical viewpoints above our inclusive policy on the economy, our internationalist geopolitics, or redistribution as part of our economic policy, or whatever it might be, well, that's up to them. That's up to them. But if you have a left-wing politics that's built on popular consent, that's built upon a democratic mandate from members rather from the top down, then anybody who joins that from the outside can make the choice to do so or not, and that's up to them. The difference comes when that is trying to be imposed from the top down, or indeed when someone is making those views clear despite the fact that it is totally out of step with the membership on this issue. I mean, look at the backlash that Adrian Ramsey got for not even going half as far as Adnan Hussein did on trans people and the issues of gender identity within policy. There was quite a lot of backlash, and I'm not going to say that entirely contributed to Adrian Ramsey and Ailey Chowns losing the leadership election, but it was clear what side of this debate the broader Green Party membership led. And I don't think that we're going to see that happen. I think we will see a similar kind of thing happen when it comes to the member base of your party as well.
That was a big issue with your party. I mean, obviously it still exists, even if the launch hasn't gone so well, is that because, you had a very specific moment in 2024 where you had a group of MPs against all odds, very impressively, winning their seats as independents, which is incredibly rare in British politics, on, mainly a single issue, a very important issue, but on Gaza. And now they've tried to form a political party, and actually that single issue is not enough to base a political party on. It feels a bit to me like your party is, if you try and make a Gaza protest into a political party, and there are alliances that make sense for a single issue that don't necessarily translate into being a political party with a broad platform and program. So while I tend to be very broad church when it comes to political parties, there does seem to be something incoherent about your party because of the outsized role that these independent MPs have had in shaping it, when actually, they were elected on pretty much a single issue, which doesn't necessarily mean they have much more in common with the general vision for your party of its membership. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, when you look at the voting records, when they're starting to vote against, and all the Independent Alliance members, apart from Jeremy Corbyn, voted against putting VAT on private schools. And I'm just like, well, it's not very socialist, is it? And this was what it was billed as. It was billed as a mass movement socialist party from the start, from Zara and Jeremy. I don't know who it was who invited the Independent Alliance members in to help start your party. And that was, to be fair, that was Iqbal Muhammad's point. He was like, well, we were just asked to come in here and start this up. Like, you don't go accusing us of trying to upset the apple cart. We were invited in and we're making our views heard as independent MPs. But as far as I can see, they're just kind of liberal Democrats who are pro-Gaza, right? I mean, Ayub Khan was literally a liberal Democrat up until 2024, until he, left for pretty, for perfectly acceptable reasons, that he was standing on principle over Gaza, over criticism of Israel, and he left the party. And I think it was probably good that he did. And Adnan Hussein, Iqbal Muhammad, Shaka Adam, and Ayub Khan are serving their communities as independents. I mean, I think the best part of this really is that Adnan Hussein is very clear that he's there to represent the members that voted him in, the people of Blackburn that voted him in. And that's always going to cause tension as an independent MP with the broader interests of a political party that up until very recently he was part of candidate selection for, at least in the registration for your party as a political party. And him no longer being a part of that means he can focus more on being the independent MP for those people that elected him, for that community that he says that he represents. There's probably a better outcome for both him and your party for them to be going their separate ways. But Shocker Adam himself did an interview with the New Statesman. So, well, I'm pro-business. I'm a small business owner. I own and op petitions. Multiple of these people are landlords. It's not just one or two of them. Multiple of the Independent Alliance MPs are landlords as well. And that is quite literally being the bourgeois. You are a rentier capitalist if you're a landlord. That's not compatible with socialism, friend. That's not how that works. And it's clear, as you say, that just having a singular point that you agree on, internationalist foreign policy, a foreign policy which is anti-American unipolarity, or anti-support for Israel's colonial project in the Middle East, is not big enough of an issue to be able to create a political alliance on. And when you start inviting in landlords into Progressive Economic Party, when you start inviting in people who can't even bring themselves to want to tax the high earners, who are the vast majority of people who send their kids to private schools, it's clear that there is not much in terms of economic policy that's going to unite these going forward. That's always been the issue.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have an economic policy to unite you, then the social issues probably really will tear you apart. We will wrap up there. If you want to read more about the resignation of Adnan Hussein, you can check out our story by Harriet Williamson, who dove into the circumstances surrounding the resignation. That's up at novaramedia.com now. You can find a link in the description below.